Most popular rock bands usually only have about 4 or 5 members. So why do we need unlimited tracks in our DAW? So when I first got my Focusrite audio interface, it came free with a version of Ableton Live Lite. Now the limitation to that was 8 tracks. Now I knew that Sgt. Pepper was recorded on a 4-track tape recorder, 4-track machine recorder, whatever you call it, desk machine, which records songs. But I knew that it was done on a 4-track. Of course, they bounced the tracks back to the first track, and they did that, and I knew I could do that. But like, I knew 8 was like double of what the Beatles used on Sgt. Pepper. So like, I knew that was enough for me. Now, I used that for several years, but during the first few years, I remember where I had once gone to Matrix Sound Lab in Darjeeling for some mastering, and he uses Cubase, and like he uses the full version or something of Cubase. I don't know which version, and also I'm talking like what 8 9 years 10 years in the past. So that time he was using Cubase, and I asked him like, how many tracks can you have? And he said unlimited. I was shocked when he said that. Like, I didn't know DAWs could have unlimited number of tracks. So anyways, after that, I kept using 8 tracks and like Ableton Live Lite for like up right up until 2022 probably, or 23. Like I used 8 tracks, and in those about, what is this, 8 or 9 years of me using Ableton, like there were only about 2 or 3 instances where I actually had to do the bounce back technique to get it all on one track. I definitely did that for the no I, no the Rhododendron song was actually done on like a different studio where I work. So it was done in like, I don't know, Logic or Garage Pro or something, Pro Studio, like on a different software. But I definitely recorded the first acoustic guitar and the main vocals. Those things were done on my DAW on Ableton, and then I bounced those stems to work on the bigger system because we were using drums, and drums we know takes a lot of tracks. So I was using that, and but what I'm talking about is when I was using it on my own computer. Like there were only 2 or 3 times when I had to bounce back to get more tracks. And then I think around 2022 or something, like that is when I came to know about the educational offer of Ableton. And that time Ableton was on Ableton 11, and it was every for people who are in education, either as a student or as a teacher. Like, it was 50% off. So for me, it came down to like the Ableton intro was like about $50, which I think is pretty affordable. Like, it's like it was almost a no-brainer. So I got it. I got the Ableton intro. So now it was like I have doubled my number of tracks. Like, it's like double the power. I have 16 tracks. So uh, it's been what like there are probably a couple years since then, 1.5 years maybe. I think I've used it more than 8 tracks, like 2 or 3 times. Just yesterday or day before, no, it was today. Today morning, I did a gamelan music, and then like I used, I think, about 8 plus 4 plus 1. What is that? 12, 13 tracks. And then sometimes I intentionally, like, knowing that, knowing that I have more tracks, I intentionally add track, and one of those tracks will just be for almost for no reason, just maybe one small hit, or maybe just a copy of that, just to keep sometimes as backups. Like, suppose I don't know which take should I use, so like, and I don't want to delete another take, and maybe I keep a copy of the track or copy of the take on another track. So that is how I'm using the extra tracks on Ableton. I rarely ever use like even 8 tracks. And I I have made a default template for myself whenever I open Ableton, and I've got 5 tracks over there. One for vocals with some compression and EQ, some very basic stuff, and one for guitar with amplitude loaded and tube screamer at the like a tube screamer loaded, but then it's off, and I just need to press a button on my keyboard. I've made a shortcut on my keyboard to turn that on. And then drums, like the modo drums, I've made my own custom template, and an organ which again is ready to be played, and a track for bass which already has bass amps preloaded. So that is what, I need. Like, maybe once in a while I need an extra guitar track if I'm doing a rhythm guitar and a solo guitar solo. But usually 5 tracks is all I need. And then it got me thinking about like what rock music really is. And when we think of some of the greatest rock bands, like, they don't have a lot of members. Like, we think of experience, Jimi Hendrix experience. Like, Jimi Hendrix music can be done in 4 tracks, like one for guitar, one for Jimmy himself on for the guitar, one for his own vocals, then Mitch Mitchell's drums, and Noel Redding's bass. That's all Jimi Hendrix needs. And if we think of Cream, like, I think Cream often double tracked the guitars. So Cream would need a few more, maybe 2 guitars for Eric, and he also sang, so 3 for Eric. And Jack Bruce's bass once, and he also sang. Then Ginger Baker, 3. So, oh, it's still 6. Like, they could have recorded on Ableton Live Lite. And then even when we think of like lots of bands, like, they are like 3-piece members, Nirvana, Police, with one of them singing. So like, they all can be recorded on Ableton Live Lite. And even if when you think of like bands which we think of like with a huge soundscape, like Led Zeppelin, right? Like, they're just 4 members, and I guess John Paul Jones would need 2, because he's sometimes playing the keys, like I mean, the Rhodes. Did he play Rhodes or Wurlitzer? And the bass. I guess Jimmy might sometimes use a theremin or something, so like maybe he would need another track. Uh, I don't know. Does Robert Plant's tambourines need another track? And what else? Sabbath again, 4 tracks. I think Tony Iommi double tracked, so 5 tracks for Black Sabbath. Deep Purple. The Deep Purple is a 5-piece, 5-member band. How many would they need? None of them are multi instrumentalists. So 5 tracks for Deep Purple. Mm, What else? Pink Floyd. Like Pink Floyd would probably need a few more. Especially Richard Wright would need more, and all of them sang. Like Nick Mason sang once in a while, but the other three like sang pretty frequently. So three vocal tracks for each of them, and then guitar, drums, bass, and I guess Richard Wright would need piano, organ. That's it. Three, three, again eight. So perfect. Ableton Live Lite is perfect for Pink Floyd. So that is what I started realizing. Like you don't need a lot of tracks for rock music, and how I tend to think of like the sonic spectrum of a rock band is like usually the drums, usually the bass, I would say the bass is actually right underneath. Like if you think of a song like Sunshine of Your Love, like the main riff, like especially during the solo, like mm, uh, the bass can, or I don't know, they might have used the guitar also to track it, but the bass can handle it. Or if you think of another track, let me think of a better example. Something like Dazed and Confused, like da da, that part. So that's what the bass is doing. So now this is like the backbone of the whole song, and then the drums is like drums is like the flavor. It adds flavor. I don't even want to use the term groove, because like a metronome can set a groove, but like John Bonham is not a metronome. John Bonham is not just setting the rhythm of the band. Like John Bonham is flavoring the song. Like when we think of those loud bursts, like he's really flavoring how Led Zeppelin sounds. And then like on top of that, like Jimmy and Robert Plant are like, they are, I mean, the star of the show. They are the actual like things which make the song like iconic, or like I don't know, maybe iconic is not the right word, but they are the lead instruments, like the vocals and the guitar. So like that is essentially what rock music is. And you could even argue a lot of music is essentially that, a backbone, a flavor, and something on as the lead. So like technically speaking, you could even do make music with three tracks. So do we really need more than, like, do we need more than 16 tracks? Like forget 16, do we need more than 8 tracks? I think now at that point, like we need to start questioning, when should we add more tracks. Now let's consider these 5 that I mentioned at the beginning, like drums, bass, organ putting the chords, like lead guitar and vocals. Like mm, now when do we need more tracks? I guess there are specific times where you need more tracks. Like I already gave one example of, like, if there is a rhythm guitar needed. Now is it always needed? Because the answer is no, because there's an organ doing the parts, and the bass also covers a lot of that ground. So like you don't always need a rhythm guitar, a second guitar, but if you do want it, maybe that is a good time to add a track. Another times, let's say there is a special instrument like Jimmy with the theremin, or George Harrison with the sitar. Like there's something unique that is needed extra. Maybe that is a good time to add more tracks. If there are more singers, obviously you will need more tracks. And by the way, for drums, I am like considering drums as a VST, so one track drums. Like or even if there are, like, let's just think of drums as being one instrument. If you're using a VST, like there is no reason to use multiple tracks on drums. So mm, what was I talking about? Okay, adding more tracks. I don't know where else, like what else, what other situation would you need more tracks. And now I want to also talk about when to not add extra tracks, as much as possible. Like, and like I am guilty of doing all these things. Like as I said, like sometimes like I want, let's say, like I'm playing this G over here, and then I can't choose whether I want this G or this G. Maybe I'll put in another track of doing both, but I think that can sometimes lead to like overcrowding the spectrum, and like the song can end up being too busy. So like as much as possible, it's better to avoid that. Make a decision, choose one of them, and stick to one of them. That is when, as much as possible, it's better not to add tracks. Double tracking, like I don't even see what the point of double tracking is. Like I've heard that it sounds wider, but why do we need things to sound wider? I don't know. Like rock is supposed to be straightforward. Like it's supposed to be like very. Sometimes when like I have tried double track and I do it sometimes, but I don't know why I do it because I guess it's done more when guitars are more in the background. But like if you want a riff to be more centered, more like, or solo to be more centered, like you want it to be in the limelight, it's like double tracking usually like goes against that goes against that idea. So like I'm not a big fan of double tracking, and things like, like, oh, let's add a little tambourine here, like I think that those are not good ideas too, unless the song really needs it. If the song really needs it, like, but if there's already some drums playing, like everyone's playing, like adding one tambourine, like, just for the sake of it, like it's just gonna make the song more denser and busier, and like uh, again, if you really wanted that, if you wanted some chaos in your songs, it could be, then that could be a good reason to do it. But like if that's not your original intention, then you're just crowding the your DAW space. And another thing to remember is like you should always think first as a musician and not as a producer, because like I think sometimes we tend to like make that shift, like, and it's like sometimes we tend to forget that we are first and foremost a musician. Like I never call myself a producer, because I'm simply not a producer. Like I produce because like, well, no one else is going to do it for me, like I only produce myself, my own music, and maybe sometimes my friends music, but I never I don't try not to think like a producer. Like I try to think always as a musician, as a rock musician, first and foremost, like because like I want things to be like more simple and more straightforward, but reaching the point rather than like beating around the bush trying to get the what is called the best sound. Like sometimes like these things are arguable, like is it really the best sound? So yeah, that was my talk on why we should make music with 5 tracks. Anyway, so now there's gonna be some music using just those five tracks. Editing stage, Mams here. So I did make the music, and guess what? I didn't even use 5 tracks. I used only 4 tracks because I didn't sing. I didn't use any vocals, but you could understand if I had used vocals in these tracks, it would be literally 5 tracks. But okay, minus the vocals, the guitar as a lead instrument in the intro as well as the outro. Which the intro you've already seen, and the outro is gonna be coming up after this. So I made a very blues rock kind of vibe, very Hendrixy, very Cream, or maybe even going BB King or Led Zeppelin, Black Sabbath on the other end. And the backing tracks of both of these tracks will be available on Patreon. So if you'd like to support the channel, please head on over to the link down in the description. For just $10 a month, you can get access to all of these backing tracks that I make for my videos, and you can also get access to a lot more things like outtakes of my songs. And if you just like to support for a lower tier, there's also a $5 tier, and even for that you will get access to 2 sample packs: the Synthetic India, the sample pack, which is different Indian phrases, raga phrases played on different software synths, as well as the Sitar sample pack volume 1, which is sitar and played in Rag Pimpalashi, which is C Dorian. So you'll get access to this for just $5 a month. So please do head on over to the link in the description and help keep the channel running.